everybody, today we're talking about Thor by Jason Aaron, the finale, Volume 5. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent, and today we're talking about Jason Aaron, Thor, Complete Collection, Volume 5. This is the end of our Jason Aaron Thor journey, although if you want to go watch, or you should watch, my War of the Realms review, it's up on the channel right now. I did them as separate reviews because they're kind of two different things, right? War of the Realms is not collected in this book, even though it possibly could or should be. It's very central to everything that happens in here. Of course, we've been building up to this event for a long time in the Jason Aaron Complete Collection book, but it's not there. And by some basic math rules or whatever, I decided that, hey, if it's a different book, it's a different video, and there you go, right? So this collects Thor, the 2018 series 1 through 16, as well as King Thor 1 through 4. So this is the wrap-up of all of Jason Aaron's Thor stuff. It's the wrap-up of, Jane Foster, of Thor Odin's son, of Gore the God Butcher, of Loki, all that kind of stuff. And it all comes to a head in here, although you have to read War of the Realms to really understand what's going on. You have Mike Del Mundo jumping in on art, and he's a phenomenal artist. Very different. This is a new artist for Thor. And if you can tell just by the cover here, he's very different from Russell Dodderman or Asad Ribic or Ron Garney, who we had in the previous issues or previous volumes. And it just makes everything more ethereal, his style. You've also got some guest artists in here. Gosh, who's the guy doing this Phoenix stuff with Logan? That's a different artist. I can't remember his name. He's also pretty good. Let me open up the front here. Christian Ward, Christian Ward's in here. You got Tony Moore contributing, and then you have Asad Ribic doing King Thor 1 through 4, kind of wrapping up the Gore the God Butcher stuff. So it's fun. The first couple of issues in here is Thor going to Niflheim to rescue Balder, his brother, who is now King of Hell. And you have like a little disagreement with Hela. Thanos appears very quickly in here. That's a whole lot of fun. This is where I fell in love with Thor the dog, wanting to kill things. That's a whole lot of fun. Then you get a kind of an interlude with the far, far future with Old Man Thor, as we are going to call him, and Logan as the Phoenix. That's kind of interesting. And then you get Tony Moore doing this story of how Thor fell in love for the first time with this female Viking. I think her name is Erica. That's fun. And then you're back to the War of the Realms setup. And pretty much like right after this Roz issue where she goes and kills some ice giants with vibranium bullets, thanks to T'Challa, you have something with, what is his name? Odin. And then you have Lee Garbett doing the last fill-in here before we get to War of the Realms. So once we get to War of the Realms, we do have this nice, previously, kind of tells you what happened in the issue. So how I read it was I got to this point where he said, we're going to start the War of the Realms. And then I picked up this volume. I read issues 1 through 6. I put it down. And then I came back to this volume right in the middle of it here. And because this is issue number 12 that starts all the tie-in issues and went all the way to the end. And I feel like you can do that perfectly fine. If you want to jump around in, that is cool too. Although the stories that are collected here in the Thor volume, they are certainly side stories. It's what happened to Loki after he got eaten at the end of War of the Realms issue 1. And then what happens with Kull? How does Kull get sent to Svartalheim in that story? That is in here. And then it's a little bit of like what happened with the Battle of Thors. There's a little bit more here when we collect all the different Thors. You got Jane Foster, you got Avenger Thor, Odinson. You have young Thor and you have old man Thor. All those four kind of show up here, how that collection worked. A little bit more of the battle that I think is in number 5, issue number 5 or 6 at Stonehenge. And then after that is basically the end of War of the Realms. So I feel like they double shipped this maybe. uh, because it's only like 3 or 4 issues that have the Thor tie-ins, and then 15 and 16 are War of the Realms Fallout. You got Thor having a new role in the cosmos, that kind of thing, and then you jump to King Thor, which is set up at the end of Thor 16, and you got Loki with the Necro Sword, and then bringing back Gore the God Butcher, and how all that resolves with Thor's granddaughters, and like that final issue also kind of wraps up a whole bunch of other stuff with Shadrach. You got this nice ending. I really like the ending here with, it sounds like more of an overview than a review, but there's a cool thing at the end of King Thor 4, such a hard thing to say, where Jason Aaron is basically like, hey, I may be telling you the last Thor story in terms of chronological timeline in his view, but there are other stories to be told. It kind of lays out, some wild ideas like Thor, God Cop. That's kind of a fun idea. And that's drawn by Andrea Sorrentino, and that's a fun thing he does for like 2 pages. There's another thing he does after that. So it's just like, hey, there are other Thor stories to be told. Even though I told the last one, there's a whole mess of stories that can be told from here on out. So don't fret that you've read the best Thor story ever. There may be more and better things to come, which I thought was a really cool way to wrap up his storyline. What works in here? I think Mike Del Mundo's art works because it is so wild, and the fact that they get Christian Ward to come in like after the first 3 or 4 issues to do a fill-in, and his art style is really wild and colorful. It all kind of blends together, and then you go back to Mike Del Mundo. That all works really, really well, all the way through the end of those 16 issues. And then you have like a hard chop where you go to King Thor, and then you got Assad Ribic coming back, who's a totally different style than Mike Del Mundo. Del Mundo is very expressive, and it works for those moments when you have like Odin yelling at things or Thor yelling at things. It's very fun. His version of the Rainbow Bridge, or all these different areas, are so colorful, so beautiful. I believe he's a digital artist, honestly. That would be my guess, because he's credited as, I believe he's credited as an artist, yeah. And there are some color assists and stuff in here, but mostly when it says Mike Del Mundo, it says artist Mike Del Mundo, and then color artist Mike Del Mundo with assists from other colorists. But they're pretty much, doing what Mike Del Mundo tells them to do, using his colors, his style. But it's pretty phenomenal. It's a really interesting book to look at artistically, because you've been on the spectrum for the Thor comic, right? You started off with Assad Ribic, and then you had, Patrick Zurcher doing the Malekith story. That was fun. And then you have the jump to Russell Dodderman for those next 3 volumes, and with some other artists mixed in there a little bit also. And then that was very colorful. And then you get this, which is like pretty much all colors, no inks, I would say. Yes, there's black lines, don't get me wrong, but the style is basically like, hey, what if we removed the inks from a comic book? How cool would that look? And how can you make that visually interesting and not just look like a blob of colors? That's what he's doing here, because it's more painterly also. So that helps a lot. So it's just like you're starting from this realistic Gore the God Butcher thing, and we're just pushing color all the way to the end, as if you're like walking along the Rainbow Bridge the entire time and just getting immersed. Instead of looking at the stars, you kind of focus down and start looking at the Rainbow Bridge and getting immersed in the colors. And I feel like that's the artistic journey on this Thor run across these 5 volumes, as we get more and more wild with color with each artist, until you come back to the end with Assad Ribic here in the King Thor storyline. So talking about that, the King Thor storyline, it's a cool idea. You have Loki coming back with the Necro Sword, the all black, becoming the Necro Butcher or whatever, and trying to kill Thor, and then you find out that, oh, actually Gore is involved, and at this point in time, it's only old man King Thor fighting everything, because you're at the end of time, only Midgard remains, and we've kind of been checking in with his story for a while, and just seeing how he defeats Gore the God Butcher after Gore kind of becomes this all-encompassing thing. He becomes his own God bomb, basically. That's very interesting. And the wrap-up here, like I was saying earlier, with the different stories that may be yet to come, are really interesting also. And there's a nice little, ending at the end here where, you know, Jason Aaron gives Thor a definitive ending, kind of the way All-Star Superman has for that Superman in the book. Sends him off to do something really cool, which I don't want to spoil for you, and then kind of wraps it all up with like, hey, this is a story, let me tell you a story. Really interesting ending. So I really enjoyed this book, honestly. I enjoyed reading this more than I did reading the War of the Realms event for those reasons I listed in that video. But yeah, I think overall, this is the most fun I've had reading Thor in this volume, particularly. I mean, I like Odinson, but I think Mike Del Mundo's art just blew it away for me. I mean, look at this. This is just an awesome image. But it's not to say that I didn't enjoy the first 4 volumes. I definitely did. You can go back and watch those reviews if you want to see. It's just that this one was a return to form because you have Thor Odinson returning to the mantle, so to speak, after a long absence. And there's something about returning a main character after an absence that just feels good every time you read one. And I think that's why it's a used plot line a lot. You know what I mean? That's not to say the Jane Foster stuff is bad. I really enjoyed those too. And Russell Dodderman's artwork in those is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I think because we're building on something, this seemed like a climax with the story, with the art, and everything. And I thought it was a phenomenal climax. Even though you have to read War of the Realms in the middle here. And that War of the Realms is consequential. I still feel like the wrap-up issues are better. Like Thor 15 and 16 had more fun reading those than I did all of the main event book. So, I don't know. Take that for what it will. And the King Thor stuff is just phenomenal. So, I really enjoyed this volume. If you've read any of Jason Aaron's Thor and you liked it, you owe it to yourself to make it to the end for this finale. And don't forget to pick up War of the Realms because that is actually what we've been building towards for so long in these complete collections. Although reading this collection by itself almost kind of feels like an afterthought. So, I don't know. They're kind of brother and sister books, but one is more important than the other in terms of everything. So, Complete Collection Volume 5, big thumbs up for me. Really enjoyed it. Let me know down below what you guys think of Jason Aaron's Thor run. What was the best moment in here? Who did you like the best? Christian Ward, Mike Del Mundo, or Asad Ribic? Let me know in the comments down below. And we'll see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.